Hello, my name's David and welcome to Wild Beast Escapes. I'm standing here just outside Hull Marina, which has played a part over the last 16 years of the adventure that I've been having. I haven't used my YouTube channel, which I set up many years ago, because really my passion has always been for still photography. So my Instagram account and my blog, which used the same name, Wild Beast Escapes, has always taken priority. But I'm just on the cusp of a new adventure, and I've decided that I ought to have a go at least on doing some YouTube videos, and so this is going to be the first one. The original adventure really began in the early 1990s when I got offered a job to live and work in Brazil. And so off I went to Sao Paulo with my wife and my two very young sons. In fact, the youngest was only 8 weeks old when we flew over to Sao Paulo, and we stayed there for 4 years. I had to learn the language because I was the manager of a factory, and after a year or two my language was quite good there, and I decided I wanted to read a book in Portuguese, written in Portuguese. And I went down to the local bookshop like Waterstones or whatever it was in Sao Paulo, and I found a book called 10 Anos no Mar, which is 10 years at sea, which was about a family of 5 who sold everything and literally went sailing around the world for 10 years. I read the book, which I was really quite proud of, because it was long before the days of Google Translate and all those sorts of things. And I did improve my Portuguese, but the other thing I did is decided that I really wanted to do something similar. And so that's where my dream to sail really started. And it was a very simple dream. It was just I wanted to carry on working overseas. I worked for an international company at the time, and then when I retired I wanted to sail home. But that little dream came to a halt when my wife said that she didn't want to live overseas anymore. So we came back to the UK eventually, and I got a job with the same company here in Hull again, and that was the period of my life where my boss at work wanted everything yesterday, and the boys wanted ferrying about for football and tennis and whatever else they were doing, and the mortgage that I was paying off seemed to be going on forever and ever. But every so often I would have this little dream about sailing around the world. And then we eventually split, and then one day I heard my boys talking about which university they wanted to go to, and I thought, I'm going to be on my own. I ought to do something about that dream. So this was around about 2008, and I went down to Gibraltar to do an RYA competent crew course, and loved it. When I got back to Hull, I joined Hull Sailing Club, which was based here in Hull Marina. I went sailing up to Norway with one of the guys who had his own boat and wanted me to crew for him. And then I did some more training that summer. I did some sailing around the Canaries, and then I decided I really wanted my own boat. And so found a boat down in Brighton, almost exactly a year after doing my first course down in Gibraltar, and had the boat brought up to Hull Marina, because you have to go through lock gates to get in here, and the lock gates were going through a maintenance program. And I then worked at renting the house out, which was going to pay for the loan which I had to take out to buy the boat. And I then came and moved on board and lived here in Hull Marina for 5 years, planning the getaway, which I did in 2014. I'm now standing outside the Minerva pub, which is about a 2-minute walk from Hull Marina, so it was obviously really my local. And apart from being the best pub in the world for me, it's also the place where I decided to have my leaving party, which happened on the Friday night, and then on the Sunday I sailed out of Hull Marina, and as I'll show you now, down the muddy waters of the River Humber. I left on my adventure on the 29th of June 2014. So in that first year, 2014, I sailed solo and coast hopped all the way down to the Mediterranean, and then inside into the Mediterranean up to Barcelona. And I arrived about mid-December and spent my first winter in Barcelona, and my 2 sons came over for Christmas, and so that made it a really good first year. From then onwards, every year except COVID year, I sailed with somebody as crew. Maybe only 1 or 2 people, some years 5 or 6 people. And I sailed around the Med for about 4 years, then went across the Atlantic and sailed the East Caribbean, the east coast of the US up to New York City, where my eldest son was living and working at the time. I then went down to the Bahamas. I was there in 2020 when COVID hit, and so I got stuck there for a year. I didn't get any sympathy from friends being stuck in the Bahamas. I have to say the people of the Bahamas really looked after us as we were stuck there, and it was hurricane season, and I experienced my one and only hurricane, which was Hurricane Isaias, and thankfully it was only a category 1. Then I carried on and went back to the US when the pandemic was over, and then went down to the West Caribbean and Central America, and altogether in that 11 years I sailed 38 countries, and also visited another 10 or 12 countries by other modes of transport, whether I flew or whether I took ferries or overland trips. And then earlier this year I sailed into Belize, into a place called Placencia, which is really one of my happy places, and decided that my sailing days were over. And what I'd said over the last few years, when people said, people realised how long I'd been sailing, and then asked me how long I thought it would go on, and I said, well, I really don't know. I haven't set myself a target really, but when my sailing days are over, I'm going to buy a canal boat. And so I decided then that my desire to move on to another adventure was stronger than my passion for sailing, and I sailed back into Guatemala, sold the boat. I was very lucky to find somebody who was looking for a boat exactly like mine. Sold it on the 31st of March this year, and then by the 8th of April I'd landed in Heathrow, and my number 1 target was to find a narrowboat, which I have done eventually. But once I landed in Heathrow, I spent a little bit of time with my youngest son and eldest son there in Leeds and London, and then joined a friend of mine, Catherine, on her narrowboat in a place called Skipton, which is on the Liverpool to Leeds Canal. And we spent about 10 or 12 days heading down to Leeds, which was the first time I'd ever spent any time on a narrowboat, and really loved it. I then wanted to focus on buying a boat, so I jumped ship when I was in Leeds, and I've based myself in Hull, which is where I am now. I've found a boat that I want to buy. I've paid a deposit, and I'm now waiting to get a survey done and to finish the paperwork, and hopefully by the end of this month I'll be the owner of a narrowboat. So for the next part of this video, I'm going to show some footage and some photographs that I took on the trip from Skipton all the way down to Leeds. It was really glorious weather that early and middle part of April, and hopefully this shows England off to its best advantage. See you guys. You're going to be famous now on YouTube.
Oh, is that it?
Smile.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Thanks. Bye bye. Merci beaucoup. À bientôt. Au revoir.
Hi. Well, this statue here is called Voyage and has a sister statue called Vic on the south coast of Iceland, and between the two of them they symbolise over 1,000 years of sea trading between the two countries. And then here is the River Hull. The city itself is actually called Kingston upon Hull, but over many years it's just been known as Hull. And then the structure there is called the Deep, which is an aquarium. I think its proper title is a submarium, but it's really great visit if you're ever in Hull. And here is the muddy waters of the Humber River that I sailed out of 11 years ago. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. It took many hours of sorting out and editing and getting used to iMovie, so I hope you've enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it. I'd like to make some more, and over the next few weeks. I think I've already said that in one of my earlier videos. A lot's happened since the start of this video. I've since pulled out of the purchase of the boat that I was hoping to buy, because the seller, the owner, just did not seem interested in getting involved in the sale and the purchase, so I pulled the plug on that one. But since then I've found another boat, and I've already organised a survey and a lift out for the survey, so maybe by mid-June I'll be the owner of a narrowboat. But until then, I'd like to just say thank you again for watching me, and I'll see you again. Thank you.